And almost always are children to consider. Support and so forth. Many things. No, madam, divorce is never simple. Can divorce him in 10 seconds, but may take 10 years to straighten out loose ends. Isn't it much that way here? Just forget I ever asked that question, Colonel. It may be simpler here. She did talk that way, but was understandable once I got programmed. Won't spell it again. But if that is a simple marriage, what is a complex one? Found self-explaining, polyandries, clans, groups, lines, endless common patterns, considered vulgar by conservative people such as my own family. Deal my mother set up, say, after she ticked off my old man. Though didn't describe that one. Mother was always too extreme. Woman said, "You have me confused. What is the difference between a line and a clan?" Quite different. Take own case. I have honor to be member of one of the oldest line marriages in Luna. And in my prejudiced opinion, best. You asked about divorce. Our family has never had one, and will bet long odds never will. A line marriage increases instability year after year. Gains practice in art of getting along together, until notion of anybody leaving is unthinkable. Besides, takes the unanimous decision of all wives to divorce a husband. Could never happen. Senior wife would never let it get that far. Went on describing advantages. Financial security, fine home life it gives children, fact that death of a spouse, while tragic, could never be tragedy it was in a temporary family, especially for children. Children simply could not be orphaned. Suppose I wax too enthusiastic, but my family is most important thing in my life. Without them, I'm just one-armed mechanic who could be eliminated without causing a draft. Here's why he's stable, I said. Take my youngest wife, 16. Likely to be in her 80s before his senior wife. Doesn't mean all wives senior to her will die by then. Unlikely in Luna. Femmes seem to be immortal. But may all opt out of family management by then. By our family traditions, they usually do, without younger wives putting pressure on them. So Ludmilla, Bursky name, from fairy tale. Milla will have over 50 years of good example before has to carry burden. She's sensible to start with, not likely to make mistakes, and if did, has other wives to steady her. Self-correcting, like a machine with proper negative feedback. A good line marriage is immortal. Expect mine to outlast me at least 1,000 years. And is why shan't mine die when time comes. Best part of me will go on living. Prof was being wheeled out. He had them stop stretcher cart and listen. I turned to him. "Professor," I said, "you know my family. Would mind telling this lady why it's a happy family, if you think so?" "It is," agreed Prof. "However, I would rather make a more general remark. Dear madam, I gather you find our lunar marriage custom somewhat exotic." "Oh, I wouldn't go that far," she said hastily. "Just somewhat unusual." They arise, as marriage customs always do, from economic necessities of the circumstances. And our circumstances are very different from those here on Earth. Take the lying type of marriage which my colleague has been praising. And justifiably, I assure you, despite his personal bias, I am a bachelor and have no bias. Line marriage is the strongest possible device for conserving capital and ensuring the welfare of children. The two basic societal functions for marriage everywhere, in an environment in which there is no security, neither for capital nor for children, other than that devised by individuals. Somehow human beings always cope with their environments. Line marriage is a remarkably successful invention to that end. All other lunar forms of marriage serve that same purpose, though not as well. He said goodnight and left. I had with me, always, a picture of my family, newest one, our wedding with Wyoming. Brides are at their prettiest, and Wyo was radiant. And the rest of us looked handsome and happy, with Grandpa tall and proud, and not showing failing faculties. I was disappointed. They looked at it oddly. But Matthews, name was, said, "Can you spare this picture, Colonel?" Winced. "Only copy I have, and a long way from home." "For a moment, I mean. Let me have it photographed, right here. It need never leave your hands." Certainly. Not a good picture of me, but his face I have, and did wild justice, and they just don't come prettier than Lenore. So he photographed it, and next morning, they did come right into our hotel suite, and walk me before time, and did arrest me, and take me away, wheelchair and all, and did lock me in a cell with bars. For bigamy, for polygamy, for open immorality, and publicly inciting others to same. Was glad Mom couldn't see. 19. Took Stu all day to get case transferred to an FN court and dismissed. His lawyers asked to have it tossed out on diplomatic immunity, but FN judges did not fall into trap, merely noted that alleged offenses had taken place outside jurisdiction of lower court, except alleged inciting, concerning which they found insufficient evidence. Aren't any FN laws covering marriage? Can't be. Just a rule about each nation required to give full faith and credence to marriage customs of other member nations. Out of those 11 billion people, perhaps 7 billion lived where polygamy is legal. And Stu's opinion manipulators played up persecution. It gained us sympathy from people who otherwise would never have heard of us. Even gained it in North America and other places where polygamy is not legal, from people who believed in live and let live. All good, because always problem was to be noticed. To most of those bee swarm billions, Luna was nothing. A rebellion hadn't been noticed. Stu's operators had gone too much thought to plans set up to get me arrested. Was not told until weeks later after time to cool off and see benefits. Took a stupid judge, a dishonest sheriff, and barbaric local prejudice, which I triggered with that sweet picture. For Stu admitted later that range of color in Davis' family was what got Judge angry enough to be foolish, even beyond native talent for nonsense. My one consolation, that Mom could not see my disgrace, turned out mistaken. Pictures, taken through bars and showing grim face, were in every Luna paper, and write-ups used nastiest, earth-side stories, not a larger number that deployed injustice. But should have had more faith in Mimi. She wasn't ashamed, simply wanted to go outside and rip some people to pieces. While help Earthside, greatest good was in Luna. Lunas became more unified over this silly ha-ha than had ever been before. They took it personally, and Adam Celine and Simon Jester pushed it. Lunas are easygoing, except on one subject: women. Every lady felt insulted by tearing news stories. Some male Lunas who had ignored politics suddenly discovered I was their boy. Spinox, all lags feel superior to those not transported. Later found self greeted by ex-cons with, "Hi, jailbird." A lot reading. I was accepted. But saw nothing good about it then. Pushed around, treated like cattle, fingerprinted, photographed, given food we wouldn't offer hogs, exposed to endless indignity, and only that heavy field kept me from trying to kill somebody. Had I been wearing number 6 arm when grabbed, might have tried. But steadied down once I was freed. Hour later we were on way to Agra. Had at last been summoned by committee. Felt good to be back in suite in Maharaja's palace, but 11-hour zone change in less than 3 did not permit rest. We went to hearing bleary-eyed and held together by drugs. Hearing, was one-sided. We listened while chairman talked. Talked an hour. I'll summarize. Our preposterous claims were rejected. Lunar Authority's sacred trust could not be abandoned. Disorders on Earth's moon could not be tolerated. Moreover, recent disorders showed that authority had been too lenient. Omission was now to be corrected by an activist program, a 5-year plan in which all phases of life in authority's trusteeship would be overhauled. A code of laws was being drafted. Civil and criminal courts would be instituted for benefit of client employees, which meant all persons in trust area, not just consignees with uncompleted sentences. Public schools would be established, plus indoctrinal adult schools for client employees in need of same. An economic, engineering, and agricultural planning board would be created to provide fullest and most efficient use of Moon's resources and labor of client employees. An interim goal of quadrupling grain shipments in 5 years had been adopted as a figure easily obtainable once scientific planning of resources and labor was in effect. First phase would be to withdraw client employees from occupations found not to be productive, and put them to drilling a vast new system of farm tunnels, in order that hydroponics would commence in them not later than March 2078. These new giant farms would be operated by Lunar Authority, scientifically, and not left to whims of private owners. It was contemplated that this system would, by end of 5-year plan, produce entire new grain quota. In the meantime, client employees producing grain privately would be allowed to continue, but they would be absorbed into this system as their less efficient methods were no longer needed. Chairman looked up from papers. In short, the lunar colonies are going to be civilized and brought into managerial coordination with the rest of civilization. Distasteful as this task has been, I feel, speaking as a citizen rather than as a chairman of this committee, I feel that we owe you thanks for bringing to our attention a situation so badly in need of correction. Was ready to burn his ears off. Client employees. What a fancy way to say slaves. But Prof said tranquilly, I find the proposed plans most interesting. Is one permitted to ask questions, purely for information? For information, yes. North American member leaned forward. But don't assume that we are going to take any back talk from you cavemen. So mind your manners. You aren't in the clear on this, you know. Order, Chairman said. Proceed, Professor. This term, client-employee, I find intriguing. Can it be stipulated that the majority of inhabitants of Earth's major satellite are not undischarged consignees, but free individuals? Certainly, Chairman agreed bluntly. All legal aspects of the new policy have been studied. With minor exceptions, some 91% of the colonists have citizenship, original or derived, in various member nations of the Federated Nations. Those who wish to return to their home countries have a right to do so. You will be pleased to learn that the authority is considering a plan under which loans for transportation can be arranged, probably under supervision of International Red Cross and Crescent. I might add that I myself am heartily backing this plan, as it renders nonsensical any talk about slave labor. He smiled smugly. I see, agreed Prof. Most humane. Has the committee, or the authority, pondered the fact that most, effectively all, I should say, considered the fact that inhabitants of Luna are physically unable to live on this planet, that they have undergone involuntary permanent exile through irreversible physiological changes, and can never again live in comfort and health in a gravitational field 6 times greater than that to which their bodies have become adjusted. Scoundrel pursed his lips as if considering totally new idea. Speaking again for myself, I would not be prepared to stipulate that what you say is necessarily true. It might be true of some, might not be others. People vary widely. Your presence here proves that it is not impossible for a lunar inhabitant to return to Earth. In any case, we have no intention of forcing anyone to return. We hope that they will choose to stay, and we hope to encourage others to emigrate to the moon. But these are individual choices, under the freedoms guaranteed by the Great Charter. But as to this alleged physiological phenomenon, it is not a legal matter. If anyone deems it prudent or thinks he would be happier to stay on the moon, that's his privilege. I see, sir. We are free. Free to remain in Luna and work, at tasks and for wages set by you, or free to return to Earth and die. Chairman shrugged. You assume that we are villains. We're not. Why, if I were a young man, I would immigrate to the moon myself. Great opportunities. In any case, I am not troubled by your distortions. History will justify us. Was surprised at Prof. He was not fighting. Worried about him. Weeks of strain and a bad night on top. All he said was, Honorable Chairman, I assume that shipping to Luna will soon be resumed. Can passage be arranged for my colleague and myself in the first ship? For I must admit, sir, that this gravitational weakness of which I spoke is, in our case, is very real. Our mission is completed. We need to go home. Not a word about grain barges, nor about throwing rocks, nor even futilely of beating a cow. Prof just sounded tired. Chairman leaned forward and spoke with grim satisfaction. Professor, that presents difficulties. To put it bluntly, you appear to be guilty of treason against the Great Charter, indeed, against all humanity, and an indictment is being considered. I doubt if anything more than a suspended sentence would be invoked against a man of your age and physical condition, however. Do you think it would be prudent of us to give you passage back to the place where you committed these acts, there to stir up more mischief? Prof sighed. I understand your point. Then, sir, may I be excused? I am weary. Certainly. Hold yourself at the disposal of this committee. The hearing stands adjourned. Colonel Davis. Sir. I was directing wheelchair around to get Prof out at once. Our attendants had been sent outside. A word with you, please, in my office. Looked at Prof. Eyes were closed and seemed unconscious. But he moved one finger, motioning me to him. Honorable Chairman, I'm more nurse than diplomat. Have to look after him. He's an old man. He's ill. The attendants will take care of him. Well, got as close to Prof as I could from chair, leaned over him. Prof, are you right? He barely whispered. See what he wants. Agree with him. But stall. Moments later was alone with Chairman. Soundproof door locked. Meant nothing. Room could have a dozen ears. Plus one in my left arm. He said, a drink. Coffee. I answered, no thank you, sir. Have to watch my diet here. I suppose so. Are you really limited to that chair? You look healthy. I said, I could, if I had to get up and walk across room. Might faint, or worse. Prefer not to risk. Weigh 6 times what I should. Heart's not used to it. I suppose so. Colonel, I hear you had some silly trouble in North America. I'm sorry, I truly am. Barbaric place. Always hate to have to go there. I suppose you're wondering why I wanted to see you. No, sir. Assume you'll tell me when suits you. Instead, was wondering why you still call me Colonel. He gave a barking laugh. Ha! Habit, I suppose. A lifetime of protocol. Yet it might be well for you to continue with that title. Tell me, what do you think of our 5-year plan? Thought it stunk. Seems to have been carefully thought out. Much thought went into it, Colonel. You seem to be a sensible man. I know you are. I know not only your background, but practically every word you've spoken. Almost your thoughts, ever since you set foot on Earth. You were born on the moon. Do you regard yourself as a patriot of the moon? Suppose so. But tend to think of what we did just as something that had to be done. Between ourselves, yes. That old fool Hobart. Colonel, that is a good plan, but lacks an executive. If you are really a patriot, or let's say a practical man with your country's best interests at heart, you might be the man to carry it out. He held up hand. Don't be hasty. I'm not asking you to sell out, turn traitor, or any nonsense like that. This is your chance to be a real patriot, not some phony hero who gets himself killed in a lost cause. Put it this way. Do you think it is possible for the lunar colonies to hold out against all the force that the Federated Nations of Earth can bring to bear? You're not really a military man, I know, and I'm glad you're not, but you are a technical man, and I know that too. In your honest estimation, how many ships and bombs do you think it would take to destroy the lunar colonies? I answered, 1 ship, 6 bombs. Correct. My God, it's good to talk to a sensible man. 2 of them would have to be awfully big, perhaps specially built. A few people would stay alive for a while, in smaller warrens beyond the blast areas. But 1 ship would do it, in 10 minutes. I said, conceded, sir, but Professor De La Paz pointed out that you don't get milk by beating a cow, and certainly can't by shooting it. Why do you think we've held back? Done nothing for over a month. That idiot colleague of mine, I won't name him, spoke of back talk. Back talk doesn't fret me. It's just talk, and I'm interested in results. No, my dear Colonel, We won't shoot the cow, but we would if forced to let the cow know that it could be shot. H-missiles are expensive toys, but we could afford to expend some as warning shots, wasted on bare rock to let the cow know what could happen. But that is more force than one likes to use. It might frighten the cow and sour its milk. He gave another barking laugh. Better to persuade old Bossy to give down willingly. I waited. Don't you want to know how? He asked. How? I agreed. Through you. Don't say a word and let me explain. He took me up on that high mountain and offered me kingdoms of Earth, or of Luna. Take job of Protector Pro Tem, with understanding was mine, permanently, if I could deliver. Convince loonies they could not win. Convince them that this new setup was to their advantage. Emphasize benefits. Free schools, free hospitals, free this and that. Details later, but an everywhere government just like on Terra. Taxes starting low and handled painlessly by automatic checkoff and through kickback revenues from grain shipments. But, most important, this time authority would not send a boy to do a man's job. 2 regiments of police at once. Those damned peace dragoons were a mistake, he said. One we will make again. Between ourselves, the reason it has taken us a month to work this out is that we had to convince the Peace Control Commission that a handful of men cannot police 3 million people spread through 6 largish warrens and 50 and more small ones. So you'll start with enough police, not combat troops but military police, used to quelling civilians with a minimum of fuss. Besides that, this time they'll have female auxiliaries, a standard 10%. No more rape complaints. Well, sir, think you can swing it, knowing it's best in the long run for your own people? I said I ought to study it in detail, particularly plans and quotas for 5-year plan, rather than make snap decision. Certainly, certainly, he agreed. I'll give you a copy of the white paper we've made up. Take it home, study it, sleep on it. Tomorrow we'll talk again. Just give me your word as a gentleman to keep it under your hair. No secret, really, but these things are best settled before they are publicized. Speaking of publicity, you'll need help, and you'll get it. We'll go to the expense of sending up top-notch men. Pay them what it's worth. Have them centrifuge the way those scientists do, you know. This time we're doing it right. That fool Hobart, he's actually dead, isn't he? No, sir. Senile, however. Should have killed him. Here's your copy of the plan. Sir, speaking of old men, Professor De La Paz can't stay here. We'll leave 6 months. That's best, isn't it? I tried to answer levelly. You don't understand. He is greatly loved and respected. Best thing would be for me to convince him that you mean business with those H-missiles, and that it is his patriotic duty to salvage what we can. But either way, if I return without him, well, not only could not swing it, wouldn't live long enough to try. Sleep on it. We'll talk tomorrow, say 14 o'clock. I left, and as soon as was loaded into lorry, gave way to shakes. Just don't have high-level approach. Stu was waiting with Prof. Well, said Prof. I glanced around, tapped ear. We huddled, heads over Prof's head and 2 blankets over us all. Stretcher wagon was clean, and so was my chair. I checked them each morning. But for room itself, seemed safer to whisper in the blankets. Started in. Prof stopped me. Discuss his ancestry and habits later. The facts. He offered me job of warden. I trust you accepted. 90%. I'm to study this garbage and give answer tomorrow. Stu, how fast can we execute plan Scoot? Started. We were waiting for you to return. If they let you return. Next 50 minutes were busy. Stu produced a gaunt Hindu Inidoti. In 30 minutes he was a twin of Prof, and Stu lifted Prof off wagon onto a divan. Duplicating me was easier. Our doubles were wheeled into Sweet's living room just at dusk, and dinner was brought in. Several people came and went, among them elderly Hindu woman in sari, an arm of Stuart Lejoie. A plump Babu followed them. Getting Prof up steps to roof was worst. He had never worn power walkers, had no chance to practice. and had been flat on back for more than a month. But Stu's arm kept him steady. I gritted teeth and climbed those 13 terrible steps by myself. By the time I reached roof, heart was ready to burst. Was put to it not to black out. A silent little flitter craft came out of gloom right on schedule, and 10 minutes later, we were in chartered ship we had used past month. 2 minutes after that, we jetted for Australia. Don't know what it cost to prepare this dance and keep it ready against need, but was no hitch. Stretched out by Prof and caught breath, then said, "How you feel, Prof?" "Okay, a bit tired, frustrated." Jada frustrated. Over not seeing the Taj Mahal, I mean. I never had opportunity as a young man, and here I've been within a kilometer of it twice. Once for several days, now for another day. And still, I haven't seen it, and never shall. Just a tomb. And Helen of Troy was just a woman. Sleep, lad. We landed in shiny half of Australia, place called Darwin, and were carried straight into a ship, placed in acceleration couches and dosed. Prof was already out, and I was beginning to feel dopey when Stu came in, grinning, and strapped down by us. I looked at him. "You two, who's minding shop?" "The same people who've been doing the real work all along. It's a good setup, and doesn't need me any longer. Manny O'Cobber, I did not want to be marooned a long way from home. Luna, I mean, in case you have doubts. This looks like the last train from Shanghai." "What's Shanghai got to do with?" "Huh, forget I mentioned it. Manny, I'm flat broke, concave. I owe money in all directions. Debts that will be paid only if certain stocks move the way Hakim Celine convinced me they would move shortly after this point in history. And I'm wanted, or will be, for offenses against the public peace and dignity. Put it this way, I'm saving them the trouble of transporting me. Do you think I can learn to be a drillman at my age?" Was feeling foggy, drug taking hold. "Stu, in Lana, you're told. Barely started. Mimi, eat our table forever. Mimi likes you." "Thanks, Kabar, I might, but warning, lads, deep breath." Suddenly was kicked by 10G. 20. Our craft was a ground-to-orbit ferry type used for manned satellites, for supplying FN ships in patrol orbit, and for passengers too, and from pleasure and gambling satellites. She was carrying 3 passengers instead of 40. No cargo except 3 pea suits. And a brass cannon. Yes, silly toy was along. Pea suits and Prof's Bang Bang were in Australia a week before we were. And good ship Lark had been stripped. Total crew was skipper and a cyborg pilot. She was heavily overfueled. We made, was told, normal approach on Elysium satellite, then suddenly scooted from orbital speed to escape speed, a change even more violent than liftoff. This was scanned by FN Skytrack. We were commanded to stop and explain. I got this second hand from Stu. Self still recovering and enjoying luxury at no G with one strap to anchor. Prof was still out. "So they want to know who we are and what we think we're doing," Stu told me. "We tell them that we are Chinese registered Skywagon opening Ludis bound on an errand of mercy. To it, rescuing the scientists marooned on the moon, and give our identification as Opening Lotus." "How about transponder?" "Money. If I got what I paid for, our transponder identified us as the Lark up to 10 minutes ago. And now has ID'd us as the Lotus. Soon we will know. Just one ship is in position to get the missile off, and it must blast us in, He stopped to look. "Another 27 minutes according to the wired-up gentleman booting this bucket, or its chances of getting us are poor to 0. So if it worries you, if you have prayers to say or messages to send or whatever it is one does at such times, now is the time. Think we ought to rouse Prof? Let him sleep. Can you think of a better way to make the jump than from peaceful sleep instantaneously into a cloud of radiant gas? Unless you know that he has religious necessities to attend to. He never struck me as a religious man, orthodoctrinally speaking. He's not, but if you have such duties, don't let me keep you." "Thank you. I took care of what seemed necessary before we left ground. How about yourself, Manny? I'm not much of a padre, but I'll do my best if I can help. Any sins on your mind I'll cover. If you need to confess, I know quite a little about sin. Told him my needs did not run that way. Then did recall sins. Some I cherished, and gave him a version more or less true. That reminded him of some of his own, which reminded me. Zero time came and went before we ran out of sins. Still is wise a good person to spend last minutes with, even if don't turn out to be last. We had 2 days with naught to do but undergo drastic routines to keep us from carrying up teen plagues to Luna. But didn't mind shaking from induced chills and burning with fever. Free fall was such a relief, and was so happy to be going home. Or almost happy. Prof asked what was troubling me. Nothing, I said. Can't wait to be home, but truth is ashamed to show face after we failed. Prof, what did we do wrong? Failed, my boy? Don't see what else can call it. Has to be recognized, not what we got. Manuel, I owe you an apology. You will recall Adam Celine's projection of our chances just before we left home. Stu was not in earshot, but Mike was word we never used. Was always Adam Celine for security. Certainly do. 1 in 53. Then only reached roadside drop to reeking 1 in 100. What you guess it is now, 1 in 1,000. I've had new projections every few days, which is why I owe you an apology. The last, received just before we left, included the then untested assumption that we would escape, get clear of Terra, and home safely, or that at least one of us 3 would make it, which is why Comrade Stu was summoned home, he having a Terran's tolerance of high acceleration. 8 projections, in fact, ranging from 3 of us dead, through various combinations up to 3 surviving. Would you care to stake a few dollars on what that last projection is? Setting a bracket and naming your own odds? I'll give a hint. You are far too pessimistic. Now damn it, just tell. The odds against us are now only 17 to 1, and they've been shortening all month, which I couldn't tell you. Was amazed, delighted, overjoyed, hurt. What do you mean, couldn't tell me? Look, Prof, if not trusted, deal me out and put Stu in executive cell. Please, son. That's where you will go if anything happens to any of us. You, me, or dear Wyoming. I did not tell you Earthside, and can tell you now, not because you are trusted, but because you are no actor. You could carry out your role more effectively if you believed that our purpose was to achieve recognition of independence. Now he tells. Manuel, we had to fight hard every instant, and lose. So, am big enough boy to be told. Please, Manuel. Keeping you temporarily in the dark greatly enhanced our chances. You can check this with Adam. May I add that Stewart accepted his summons to Luna blithely, without asking why. Comrade, that committee was too small. Its chairman, too intelligent. There was always the hazard that they might offer an acceptable compromise. That first day, there was grave danger of it. Had we been able to force our case before the Grand Assembly, there would have been no danger of intelligent action. But we balked. The best I could do was to antagonize the committee, even stooping to personal insult to make certain of at least one holdout against common sense. Guess I never will understand high-level approach. Possibly not, but your talents and mine complement each other. Manuel, you wish to see Luna free. You know I do. You also know that Terra can defeat us. Sure, no projection ever gave anything close to even money, so don't say why you set out to antagonize, please. Since they can inflict their will on us, our only chance lies in weakening their will. That was why we had to go to Terra, to be divisive, to create many opinions. The shrewdest of the great generals in China's history once said that perfection in war lay in so sapping the opponent's will that he surrenders without fighting. In that maxim lies both our ultimate purpose and our most pressing danger. Suppose, as seemed possible that first day, We had been offered an inviting compromise. Governor in place of a warden, possibly from our own number. Local autonomy, a delegate in the Grand Assembly, a higher price for grain at the catapult head, plus a bonus for increased shipments. A disavowal of Hobart's policies combined with an expression of regret over the rape and the killings, with handsome cash settlements to the victim survivors. Would it have been accepted back home? They did not offer that. The chairman was ready to offer something like it that first afternoon, and at that time he had his committee in hand. He offered us an asking price close enough to permit such a dicker. Assume that we reached in substance what I outlined. Would it have been acceptable at home? Maybe. More than maybe. By the bleak projection made just before we left home, it was the thing to be avoided at any cost. A settlement which would quiet things down, destroy our will to resist, without changing any essential in the longer-range prediction of disaster. So I switched the subject and squelched the possibility by being difficult about irrelevancies and politely offensive. Manuel, you and I know, and Adam knows, that there must be an end to food shipments. Nothing less will save Luna from disaster. But can you imagine a wheat farmer fighting to end those shipments? No. Wonder if can pick up news from home on how they're taking stoppage. There won't be any. Here's how Adam has timed it, Manuel. No announcement is to be made on either planet until after we get home. We are still buying wheat. Barges are still arriving at Bombay. You told them shipments would stop at once. That was a threat, not a moral commitment. A few more loads won't matter, and we need time. We don't have everyone on our side. We have only a minority. There is a majority who don't care either way, but can be swayed temporarily. We have another minority against us, especially grain farmers, whose interest is never politics but the price of wheat. They are grumbling but accepting scrip, hoping it will be worth face value later, but the instant we announce that shipments have stopped, they will be actively against us. Adam plans to have the majority committed to us at the time the announcement is made. How long? 1 year? 2? 2 days, 3 days, perhaps 4. Carefully edited excerpts from that 5-year plan. Excerpts from the recordings you've made, especially that yellow dog offer. Exploitation of your arrest in Kentucky. Hey, I'd rather forget that. Prof smiled and cocked an eyebrow. I said uncomfortably. Okay, if will help. It will help more than any statistics about natural resources. Wired up ex-human piloting us went in as one maneuver without bothering to orbit and gave us even heavier beating. Ship was light and lively. A change in motion is under 2.5 kilometers. Was over in 19 seconds, and we were down at Johnson City. I took it right, just a terrible constriction in chest, and a feeling as if Giant was squeezing heart. Then was over, and I was gasping back to normal, and glad to be proper weight, but did almost kill poor old Prof. Mike told me later that pilot refused to surrender control. Mike would have brought ship down in LOG, no break a meg, knowing Prof was aboard. But perhaps that cyborg knew what he was doing. LOG landing waste mass, and Lotus Lark grounded almost dry. None of which we cared about, as looked as if that garrison landing had wasted Prof. Stu saw it while I was still gasping, then we were both at him. Heart stimulant, manual respiration, massage. At last he fluttered eyelids, looked at us, smiled. Home, he whispered. We made him rest 20 minutes before we let him suit up to leave ship. Had been as near dead as can be, and not here, angels. Skipper was filling tanks, anxious to get rid of us and take on passengers. That Dutchman never spoke to us whole trip. Think he regretted letting money talk him into a trip that could ruin or kill him. By then, while I was inside ship, pea-suited to come meet us. Don't think Stu had ever seen her in a pea-suit, and certainly he had never seen her as a blonde. Did not recognize. I was hugging her in spite of pea-suit. He was standing by, waiting to be introduced. Then strange man in pea-suit hugged him. He was surprised. Heard Wile's muffled voice. Oh heavens, patting my helmet. I unclamped it, lifted off. She shook curls and grinned. Stu, aren't you glad to see me? Don't you know me? A grin spread over his face, slowly, as dawn crossed Maria. Zdravstvuйте, госпожа. I am most happy to see you. Госпожа, indeed. I'm loyal to you, dear, always. Didn't Manny tell you I'd gone back to blonde? Yes, he did. But knowing it and seeing are not the same. You'll get used to it. She stopped to bend over Prof, kiss him, giggle at him, then straightened up and gave me a no-helmet welcome home that left us both with tears despite pesky suit. Then turned again to Stu, started to kiss him. He held back a little. She stopped. Stu, am I going to have to put on brown makeup to welcome you? Stu glanced at me, then kissed her. Why put in as much time and thought as she had to welcoming me? With later I figured out his odd behavior. Stu, despite commitment, was still not a loony, and in the meantime Weil had married. What's that got to do with it? Well, Earthside it makes a difference, and Stu did not know how deep down in bones that a loony lady is her own mistress. Poor chum thought I might take offense. We got Prof into suits, ourselves same, and left me with cannon underarm. Once on the ground and locked through, we unsuited, and I was flattered to see that Weil was wearing, crushed under pea suit, that red dress I bought her ages ago. She brushed it, and skirt flared out. Immigration room was empty save for about 40 men lined up along wall like new transportees, wearing pea suits and carrying helmets. Terrans going home, stranded tourists, and some scientists. Their pea suits would not go. They would be unloaded before lift. I looked at them, and thought about Cyborg Pilot. When Lark had been stripped, all but 3 couches had been removed. These people were going to take acceleration lying on floor plates. If Skipper was not careful, he was going to have mashed Terrans ablut. Mentioned to Stu. Forget it, he said. Captain Lores has foam pads aboard. He wouldn't let them be hurt. They're his life insurance. 21. My family, all 30-odd from Grandpa to babies, was waiting beyond next lock on level below. And we got cried on and slobbered on and hugged, and this time Stu did not hold back. Little Hazel made ceremony of kissing us. She had liberty caps, set one on each, then kissed us. And at that signal, whole family put on liberty caps. And I got sudden tears. Perhaps this is what patriotism feels like, choked up and so happy it hurts. Or maybe it was just being with my beloveds again. Where's Slim? I asked Hazel. Wasn't he invited? Couldn't come. He's junior marshal of your reception. Reception? This is all we want. You'll see. Did. Good thing family came out to meet us. That and Rydale City, filled the capsule, were all I saw of them for some time. Tube Station West was a howling mob, all in liberty caps. We 3 were carried on shoulders all the way to Old Dome, surrounded by a Stilyagi bodyguard. Elbows locked to force through cheering, singing crowds. Boys were wearing red caps and white shirts, and their girls wore white jumpers and red shorts, color of caps. At station, and again when they put us down in Old Dome, I got kissed by femmes I have never seen before, or since. Remember hoping that measures we had taken in lieu of quarantine were effective, or half of Hill City would be down with colds, or worse. Apparently we were clean, was no epidemic, but I remember time was quite small, when measles got loose, and thousands died. Worried about Prof too. Reception was too rough for a man good as dead an hour earlier. But he not only enjoyed it, he made a wonderful speech in Old Dome. One, short on logic, loaded with ringing phrases. Love was in it, and home, and Luna, and comrades and neighbors, and shoulder to shoulder. And all sounded good. They had erected a platform under big news video on South Face. Adam Selene greeted us from video screen, and now Prof's face and voice were projected from it, much magnified, over his head. Did not have to shout, but did have to pause after every sentence. Crowd roars drowned out even bull voice from screen, and no doubt pauses helped, as rest. But Prof no longer seemed old, tired, ill. Being back inside the rock seemed to be tonic he needed, and me too. Was wonderful to be right weight, feel strong, breathe pure, replenished air of own city. No mean city. Impossible to get all of El City inside Old Dome, but looked as if they tried. I estimated an area 10 meters square. Tried to count heads. Got over 200, not half through, and gave up. Lunatic place crowd at 30,000. Seems impossible. Prof's words reached more nearly 30 million. Video carried scene to those who could not crowd into Old Dome. Cable and relay flashed it across Lonely Maria to all barns. He grabbed chance to tell of slave future authority plan for them. Waved that white paper. Here it is, he cried. Your fetters, your leg irons. Will you wear them? No! They say you must. They say they will H-bomb, then survivors will surrender and be put on these chains. Will you? No, never. Never, agreed Prof. They threaten to send troops. More and more troops to rape and murder. We shall fight them. Da! We shall fight them on the surface. We shall fight them in the tubes. We shall fight them in the corridors. If die we must, we shall die free. Yes, Yada, tell him. And if we die, let history write, this was Luna's finest hour. Give us liberty, or give us death. Some of that sounded familiar, but his words came out fresh and new. I joined in roars. Look, I knew we couldn't win Terra. I'm tech by trade and know that an H-bomb doesn't care how brave you are. I was ready to. If they wanted a fight, let's have it. Prof let them roar. They led them in Battle Hymn of the Republic, Simon's version. Adam appeared on screen again, took over leading it, and sang with them. And we tried to slip away, off back of platform, with help of Stilyagi, led by Slim. But women didn't want to let us go, and lads are at their best in trying to stop ladies. They broke through. Was 2200 before we four. Lyle, Prof, Stu, Self, were locked in room L of Raffles, where Adam, Mike, joined us by video. I was starved by then, all were, so I ordered dinner, and Prof insisted that we eat before reviewing plans. Then, we got down to business. Adam started by asking me to read aloud white paper, for his benefit and for Comrade Wyoming. But first, Comrade Madwell, if you have the recordings you made Earthside, could you transmit them by phone at high speed to my office? I'll have them transcribed for study. All I have so far are the coded summaries Comrade Stewart sent up. I did so, knowing Mike would study them at once. Phrasing was part of Adam's Celine myth, and decided to talk to Prof about letting Stu in on facts. If Stu was to be in executive cell, pretending was too clumsy. Feeding recordings into Mike at over speed took 5 minutes. Reading aloud another 30. That done, Adam said, Professor, the reception was more successful than I had counted on, due to your speech. I think we should push the embargo through Congress at once. I can set out a call tonight for a session at noon tomorrow. Comments? I said, look, those yammerheads will kick it around for weeks. If you must put it up to them, can't see why. Do as you did with Declaration. Start late, jam it through after midnight using own people. Adam said, Sorry, Manuel. I'm getting caught up on events Earthside, and you have catching up to do here. It's no longer the same group. Comrade Wyoming. Manny, dear, it's an elected Congress now. They must pass it. Congress is what government we have. I said slowly, You held the election and turned things over to them. Everything. Then what are we doing? Looked at Prof, expecting explosion. My objections would not be on these grounds, but couldn't see any use in swapping one talk for another. At least first group had been so loose we could pack it. This new group would be glued to seats. Prof was undisturbed, fitted fingertips together and looked relaxed. Manuel, I don't think the situation is as bad as you seem to feel that it is. In each age it is necessary to adapt to the popular mythology. At one time, kings were anointed by deity, so the problem was to see to it that deity anointed the right candidate. In this age, the myth is the will of the people, but the problem changes only superficially. Comrade Adam and I have had long discussions about how to determine the will of the people. I venture to suggest that this solution is one we can work with. Well, okay. But why weren't we told? Stu, did you know? Ha, no, money. There was no reason to tell me. He shrugged. I'm a monarchist. I wouldn't have been interested. But I go along with proof that in this day and age elections are a necessary ritual. Proof said, Manuel, it wasn't necessary to tell us till we got back. You and I had other work to do. Comrade Adam and dear Comrade Wyoming handled it in our absence. So let's find out what they did before we judge what they've done. Sorry. Well, Manny, we didn't leave everything to chance. Adam and I decided that a Congress of 300 would be about right. Then we spent hours going over the party lists, plus prominent people not in the party. At last we had a list of candidates, a list that included some from the ad hoc Congress. Not all were yammerheads. We included as many as we could. Then Adam phoned each one and asked him, or her, if he would serve, binding him to secrecy in the meantime. Some we had to replace. When we were ready, Adam spoke on video, announced that it was time to carry out the party's pledge of free elections, set a date, said that everybody over 16 could vote, and that all anyone had to do to be a candidate was to get 100 chops on a nominating petition and post it in Old Dome, or the public notice place for his warrant. Oh yes, 30 temporary election districts, 10 congressmen from each district. That let all but the smallest warrants be at least one district. So you had it lined up and party ticket went through? Oh no, dear. There wasn't any party ticket officially. But we were ready with our candidates, and I must say Meister Yagi did a smart job getting chops on nominations. Our optings were posted the first day. Many other people posted. There were over 2,000 candidates. But there was only 10 days from announcement to election, and we knew what we wanted, whereas the opposition was split up. It wasn't necessary for Adam to come out publicly and endorse candidates. It worked out. You won by 7,000 votes, dear, while your nearest rival got less than 1,000. I won. You won. I won. Professor won. Comrade Clayton won, and just about everybody we thought should be in the Congress. It wasn't hard, although Adam never endorsed anyone. I didn't hesitate to let our comrades know who was favored. Simon poked his finger in too. And we do have good connections with newspapers. I wish you had been here election night watching the results. Exciting. How did you go about nose counting? Never known how election works. Write names on a piece of paper. Oh no, we used a better system. Because after all, some of our best people can't write. We used banks for voting places, with bank clerks identifying customers and customers identifying members of their families and neighbors who didn't have bank accounts. And people voted orally, and the clerks punched the votes into the bank's computers, with the voter watching. And results were all tallied at once in Luna City Clearinghouse. We voted everybody in less than 3 hours, and results were printed out just minutes after voting stopped. Suddenly, a light came on in my skull, and I decided to question Wyle privately. No, not Wyle. Mike. Get past his Adam silly indignity and hammer truth out of his neuristers. Recalled a check $10 million too large, and wondered how many had voted for me. 7,000, 700, or just my family and friends. But no longer worried about new Congress. Proof had not slipped him a cold deck, but one that was frozen solid. The inductor of sidewalk crime was committed. No use asking Wyle. She didn't even need to know what Mike had done, and could do her part better if did not suspect. Nor would anybody suspect. If was one thing all people took for granted, was conviction that if you feed honest figures into a computer, honest figures come out. Never doubted it myself, till I made a computer with sense of humor. Changed my mind about suggesting that Stu be let in on Mike's self-awareness. 3 was too many. Or perhaps 3. Mike, yeah, I started to say and changed to, my word, sounds efficient. How big did we win? Adam answered without expression. 86% of our candidates were successful, approximately what I had expected. Approximately my false left arm, exactly what expected, Mike, old ironmongery. Withdraw objection to noon session. I'll be there. It seems to me said Stu. Assuming that the embargo starts at once, we will need something to maintain the enthusiasm we witnessed tonight, or there will be a long, quiet period of increasing economic depression. From the embargo, I mean, and growing disillusionment. Adam, you first impressed me through your ability to make shrewd guesses as to future events. Do my misgivings make sense? They do. Well, Adam looked at us in turn. It was almost impossible to believe that this was a false image, and Mike was simply placing us through binaural receptors. Comrades, it must be turned into open war as quickly as possible. Nobody said anything. One thing to talk about war, another to face up to it. At last I sighed and said, "When do we start throwing rocks?" "We do not start," Adam answered. "They must throw the first one. How do we antagonize them into doing so? I will reserve my thoughts to the last. Comrade Manuel." Don't look at me. Way I feel would start with a nice big rock smack on Agra. A bloke there who is a waste of space. But not what you were after." "No, it is not," Adam answered seriously. "You would not only anger the entire Hindu nation, a people intensely opposed to destruction of life, but you would also anger and shock people throughout Earth by destroying the Taj Mahal." "Including me," said Prof. "Don't talk dirty, Manuel." "Look," I said, "didn't say to do it. Anyhow, couldn't miss Taj." "Manuel," said Prof. "As Adam pointed out, our strategy must be to antagonize them into striking the first blow. The classic Pearl Harbor maneuver of game theory. A great advantage in Weltpolitik. The question is how. Adam, I suggest that what is needed is to plant the idea that we are weak and divided, and that all it takes is a show of force to bring us back into line. Stu, your people Earthside should be useful. Suppose the Congress repudiated myself and Manuel. The effect?" "Oh no," said Weil. "Oh yes, dear Weil. Not necessary to do it, but simply to put it over news channels to Earth. Perhaps still better to put it out over a clandestine beam attributed to the Terran scientists still with us, while our official channels display the classic stigmata of tight censorship. Adam, I'm noting it as a tactic which probably will be included in the strategy, but it will not be sufficient alone. We must be bombed." "Adam," said Weil, "why do you say so? Even if Luna City can stand up under their biggest bombs. Something I hope never to find out. We know that Luna can't win an all-out war. You've said so many times. Isn't there some way to work it out so that they will just plain leave us alone?" Adam pulled at right cheek, and I thought, Mike, if you don't knock off play acting, you'll have me believing in you myself. Was annoyed at him and looked forward to a talk, one in which I would not have to defer to Chairman SKYLINES. "Comrade Wyoming," he said soberly, "it's a matter of game theory in a complex, non-zero-sum game. We have certain resources or pieces in the game, and many possible moves. Our opponents have much larger resources and a far larger spectrum of responses. Our problem is to manipulate the game so that our strength is utilized toward an optimax solution, while inducing them to waste their superior strength, and to refrain from using it at maximum. Timing is of the essence, and the gambit is necessary to start a chain of events favorable to our strategy. I realize this is not clear. I could put the factors through a computer and show you, or you can accept the conclusion, or you can use your own judgment." He was reminding Weil, under Stu's nose, that he was not Adam SKYLINES but Mike, our dinkum-thinkum, who could handle so complex a problem because he was a computer, and smartest one anywhere. Weil backtracked. No, she said. "I wouldn't understand the maths. Okay, it has to be done. How do we do it?" Was 400 before we had a plan that suited Prof and Stu as well as Adam? Or took that long for Mike to sell his plan while appearing to pull ideas out of the rest of us? Or was it Prof's plan with Adam SKYLINES as salesman? In any case, we had a plan and calendar, one that grew out of master strategy of Tuesday, 14 May, 2075, and varied from it only to match events as they actually had occurred. In essence, He called for us to behave as nastily as possible, while strengthening impression that we could be awfully easy to spank. Was at community hall at noon, after too little sleep, and found I could have slept 2 hours longer. Congressman from Hong Kong could not make it that early despite tube all the way. Wyle did not bang gavel until 14:30. Yes, my bride wife was chairman pro tem in a body not yet organized. Parliamentary rulings seemed to come naturally to her, and she was not a bad choice. A mob of loonies behaves better when a lady bangs gavel. Not going to detail what new Congress did and said that session and later. Minutes are available. I showed up only when necessary and never bothered to learn talk rules. Seemed to be equal parts common politeness and ways in which chairman could invoke magic to do it his, her way. No sooner had Wilde banged them to order, but a cobber jumped up and said, "Gauche Blajat, Chairman. Move we suspend rules and hear from Comrade Professor de la Paz," which brought a whoop of approval. Wilde banged again. "Motion is out of order and member from Lower Churchill will be seated. This House recessed without adjourning, and Chairman of Committee on Permanent Organization, Resolutions, and Government Structure still has the floor." Turned out to be Wolfgang Korsakov, member of Taekwondo, and a member of Profsel, and our #1 finagler of Lunohoko. And he not only had floor, he had it all day, yielding time as he saw fit, i.e., picking out whom he wanted to speak, rather than letting just anyone talk. But nobody was too irked. This mob seemed satisfied with leadership. Were noisy, but not unruly. By dinner time, Luna had a government to replace co-opted provisional government, i.e., dummy government we had opted ourselves, which sent Proof and me to Earth. Congress confirmed all acts of provisional government, thus putting face on what we had done, thanked outgoing government for services, and instructed Wolfgang's committee to continue work on permanent government structure. Proof was elected President of Congress, and ex officio Prime Minister of interim government until we acquired a constitution. He protested age and health, then said would serve if could have certain things to help him. Too old and too exhausted from trip earthside to have responsibility of presiding, except on occasions of state, so he wanted Congress to elect a speaker, and speaker pro tem. And besides that, he felt that Congress should augment its numbers by not more than 10% by itself electing members at large, so that Prime Minister, whoever he might be, could opt cabinet members or ministers of state who might not now be members of Congress, especially ministers with that portfolio, to take load off his shoulders. They balked. Most were proud of being congressmen and already jealous of status, but Proof just sat looking tired and waited, and somebody pointed out that it still left control in hands of Congress. So they gave him what he asked for. Then somebody squeezed in a speech by making it a question to chair. Everybody knew, he said, that Adam Silene had refrained from standing for Congress on grounds that Chairman of Emergency Committee should not take advantage of position to elbow way into new government. But could Honorable Chairlady tell member whether there was any reason not to elect Adam Silene a member at large? As gesture of appreciation for great services. To let all Luna, yes, and all those earthworms, especially ex-lunar ex-authority, know that we are not repudiating Adam Silene. On contrary, he was our beloved elder statesman, and was not president simply because he chose not to be. More whoops that went on and on. You can find in minutes who made that speech, but one gets you 10. Proof wrote it, and Weil planted it. Here is how it wound up over course of days. Prime Minister and Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs, Professor Bernardo de la Paz. Speaker, Finn Nielsen. Speaker Pro Tem, Wyoming Davis. Undersecretary of State for Foreign Affairs and Minister of Defense, General O'Kelly Davis. Minister of Information, Terrence Sheehan. Sheeny turned Pravda over to managing editor to work with Adam and Stu. Special Minister without portfolio in Ministry of Information, Stuart René-Leroy, Congressman at Large. Secretary of State for Economics and Finance and Custodian of Enemy Property, Wolfgang Korsakov. Minister of Interior Affairs and Safety, Comrade Clayton Watanabe. Minister without portfolio and Special Advisor to Prime Minister, Adam Silene. plus a dozen ministers and ministers without portfolio from warrens other than Luna City. See where it left things. Brush away fancy titles, and B-Cell was still running things as advised by Mike, backed by a Congress in which we could not lose a test vote, but did lose others we did not want to win, or did not care about. But at time could not see sense in all that talk. During evening session, Prof reported on trip, and then yielded to me, Committee Chairman Korsakov consenting, so that I could report what 5-year plan meant, and how authority had tried to bribe me. I'll never make a speaker, but had time during dinner break to swat speech Mike had written. He had slanted it so nastily that I got angry all over again, and was angry when I spoke, and managed to make it catching. Congress was ready to riot by the time I sat down. Prof stepped forward, thin and pale, and said quietly, "Comrade members, what shall we do?" I suggest, Comrade Korsakov consenting, that we discuss informally how to treat this latest insolence to our nation. One member from Novolin wanted to declare war, and they would have done so right then if Prof had not pointed out that they were still hearing committee reports. More talk, all bitter. At last, Comrade Member Chang Jones spoke. "Fellow Congressman, Господин Chairman Korsakov, I'm a rice and wheat farmer. Mean I used to be, because back in May I got a bank loan, and Sons and I are converting to variety farming. We are broke. Had to borrow tube fare to get here. But family is eating, and someday we might pull square with bank. At least, I'm no longer raising grain. But others are. Catapult has never reduced headway by one barge whole time we've been free. We're still shipping, hoping their checks will be worth something someday. But now we know. They've told us what they mean to do with us. To us. I say only way to make those scoundrels know we mean business is stop shipments right now. Not another ton, not a kilo, until they come here and digger honestly for honest price." Around midnight they passed embargo, then adjourned subject to call, standing committees to continue. Wayo and I went home, and I got reacquainted with my family. Was nothing to do. Mike, Adam, and Stu had been working on how to hit them with it earthside, and Mike had shut Catapult down. Technical difficulties with ballistic computer, 24 hours earlier. Last barge in trajectory would be taken by Puna ground control and slightly over 1 day, and Earth would be told, nastily, that was last they would ever get. 22. Shock to farmers was eased by continuing to buy grain with Catapult, but checks now carried printed warning that Luna Free State did not stand behind them, did not warrant that Lunar Authority would ever redeem them even in scrip, etc., etc. Some farmers left grain anyhow, some did not. All screamed. There was nothing they could do. Catapult was shut down. Loading belts not moving. Depression was not immediately felt in the rest of the economy. Defense regiments had depleted ranks of ice miners so much that selling ice on free market was profitable. Lunahoko Steel subsidiary was hiring every able-bodied man he could find, and Wolfgang Korsakov was ready with paper money. National dollars, printed to resemble Hong Kong dollar, and in theory, pegged to it. Luna had plenty of food, plenty of work, plenty of money. People were not hurting. Beer, betting, women, and work went on as usual. Nationals, as they were called, were inflation money, war money, fiat money, and were discounted a fraction of a % on day of first issue, concealed as exchange service charge. They were spendable money, and never did drop to zero but were inflationary, and exchange reflected it increasingly. New government was spending money it did not have. But that was later. Challenge to Earth, to authority, and federated nations was made intentionally nasty. FN vessels were ordered to stay clear of Luna by 10 diameters, and not orbit at any distance under pain of being destroyed without warning. No mention of how, since we could not. Vessels of private registry would be permitted to land if A. Permission was requested ahead of time with ballistic plan. B. A vessel thus cleared placed itself under lunar ground control, like at a distance of 100,000 kilometers, while following approved trajectory. And C. was unarmed, save for 3 handguns permitted 3 officers. Last was to be confirmed by inspection on landing before anybody was allowed to leave ship, and before ship was serviced with fuel and the reaction mass. Violation would mean confiscation of ship. No person allowed to land at Luna other than ship's crew in connection with loading, unloading, or servicing save citizens of Terran countries who had recognized Free Luna. Only Chad, and Chad had no ships. Prof expected some private vessels to be re-registered under Chad merchant flag. Manifesto noted that Terran scientists still in Luna could return home in any vessel which conformed to our requirements. It invited all freedom-loving Terran nations to denounce wrongs done us, and which the authority planned against us, recognize us, and enjoy free trade and full intercourse, and pointed out that there were no tariffs or any artificial restrictions against trade in Luna, and was policy of Luna government to keep it that way. We invited immigration, unlimited, and pointed out that we had a labor shortage, and any immigrant could be self-supporting at once. We also boasted of food. Adult consumption over 4,000 calories per day, high in protein, low in cost, no rationing. Stu had Adam Mike stick in price of 100 proof vodka, 50 cents HKL per liter, less in quantity, no taxes. Since this was less than 1/10 retail price of 80 proof vodka in North America, Stu knew it would hit home. Adam, by nature a teetotaler, hadn't thought of it, one of Mike's few oversights. Lunar Authority was invited to gather at one spot well away from other people, say in unirrigated part of Sahara, and receive one last barge of free grain, straight down at terminal velocity. This was followed by a snotty lecture, which implied that we were prepared to do the same to anyone who threatened our peace, there being a number of loaded barges at Catapult Head, ready for such unceremonious delivery. Then, we waited. But we waited busily. Or indeed a few loaded barges. These we unloaded and reloaded with rock, with changes made in guidance transponders so that Puna control could not affect them. Their retros were removed, leaving only lateral thrusters, and spare retros were taken to New Catapult to be modified for lateral guidance. Greatest effort went into moving steel to New Catapult and shaping it into jackets for solid rock cylinders. Steel was bottleneck. 2 days after our manifesto, a clandestine radio started beaming to Terra. Was weak and tended to fade, but was supposed to be concealed, presumably in a crater, and could be worked only certain hours until brave Terran scientists managed to rig automatic repeat. Was near frequency of voice of Free Luna, which tended to drown it out with brassy boasts. Terrans remaining in Luna had no chance to make signals. Those who had chosen to stick with research were chaperoned by Stilyagi every instant and locked into barracks to sleep. But clandestine station managed to get truth to Terra. Proof had been tried for deviationism and was under house arrest. I had been executed for treason. Hong Kong Luna had pulled out, declared self separately independent. Might be open to reason. Rioting in Novolin. All food growing had been collectivized, and black market eggs were selling for $3 apiece in Luna City. Battalions of female troops were being enlisted, each sworn to kill at least one Terran, and were drilling with fake guns in corridors of Luna City. Last was almost true. Many ladies wanted to do something militant, and had formed a home defense guard. Ladies from Hades. Huh. But their drills were of a practical nature, and Hazel was sulking because Mom had not allowed her to join. Then she got over sulks and started Stilyagi Debs, a very junior home guard which drilled after school hours, did not use weapons, concentrated on backing up Stilyagi air and pressure corps, and practiced first aid, and own no weapons fighting, which, possibly, Mom never learned. I don't know how much to tell. Can't tell all, but stuff in history books is so wrong. I was no better a defense minister than congressman. Not apologizing, had no training for either. Revolution is an amateur thing for almost everybody. Prof was only one who seemed to know what he was doing, and at that, was new to him too. He had never taken part in a successful revolution, or ever been part of the government, much less head. As defense minister, I could not see many ways to defend except for steps already taken, That is, still Yagi air squads and Warrens and laser gunners around ballistic radars. If FN decided to bomb, didn't see any way to stop them. Wasn't an interception missile in all Luna, and that's not a gadget you whoop up from bits and pieces. My word, we couldn't even make fusion weapons with which such a rocket is tipped. But I went through motions. Asked same Chinese engineers who had built laser guns to take a crack at problem of intercepting bombs or missiles. One same problem, save that a missile comes at you faster. Then turned attention to other things. Simply hoped that FN would never bomb Warrens. Some Warrens, L City in particular, were so deep down that they could probably stand direct hits. 1 cubic, lowest level of complex where a central part of Mike lived, had been designed to withstand bombing. On the other hand, Tycho Under was a big natural bubble cave, like old dome, and roof was only meters thick. Sealer on underside was kept warm with hot water pipes to make sure new cracks sealed. Would not take much of a bomb to crack Tycho Under. But there's no limit to how big a fusion bomb can be. FN could build one big enough to smash L City, or theoretically, even a doomsday job that would split Luna like a melon, and finish jobs some asteroid started at Tycho. If they did, couldn't see any way to stop them, so didn't worry. Instead, put time on problems I could manage. Helping a new catapult, trying to work up better aiming arrangements for laser drills around radars, and trying to get drone men to stick. Half of them quit once price of ice went up. Trying to arrange decentralized standby engineering controls for all Warrens. Mike did designing on this. We grabbed every general-purpose computer we could find, paying in nationals with ink barely dry. And I turned job over to McIntyre, former chief engineer for Authority. It was a job within his talents, and I couldn't do all rewiring and so forth, even if I tried. Held out biggest computer, one that did accounting for Bank of Hong Kong and Luna, and also was clearinghouse there. Looked over its instruction manuals and decided it was a smart computer for one that could not talk. So asked Mike if he could teach it ballistics. We made temporary link-ups to let 2 machines get acquainted, and Mike reported it could learn simple job we wanted it for. Standby for new catapult. Although Mike would not care to ride in ship controlled by it. Was too matter-of-fact and uncritical. Stupid, really. Well, didn't want to whistle tunes or crack jokes. Just wanted to shove loads on a catapult at right millisecond, and at correct velocity, then watch load approach Terra, and give a nudge. HQ Bank was not anxious to sell. Though we had Patriots on their board, we promised to return it when emergency was over, and moved it to new site, by Rolligan, too big for tubes, and took all one dark semi-lunar. Had to jerry-rig a big airlock to get it out of Kong Warren. I hooked it to Mike again, and he undertook to teach art of ballistics against possibility that his linkage to new site might be cut in an attack. You know what bank used to replace computer? 200 clerks, working abacuses. Abacusi? You know, slipsticks with beads, oldest digital computer. So far back in prehistory that nobody knows who invented. Ruski and Chinese and Nips have always used them, and small shops today. Trying to improve laser drills into space defense weapons was easier but less straightforward. We had to leave them mounted on original cradles. Was neither time, steel, nor metalsmiths to start fresh, so we concentrated on better aiming arrangements. Call went out for telescopes. Scarce. What con fetches along a spyglass when transported? What market later to create supply? Surveying instruments and helmet binoculars were all we turned up, plus optical instruments confiscated in Terran labs. Though we managed to equip drills with low-power big field sights to couch in with, and high-power scopes for fine sighting, plus terrain and elevation circles, and phones so that Mike could tell them where to point. 4 drills we equipped with self-synchronous repeater drives, so that Mike could control them himself. Liberated these cell sims at Richardson. Astronomers used them for Bosch cameras and Schmitz in sky mapping. But big problem was men. Wasn't money. We kept upping wages. No, a drillman likes to work, or wouldn't be in that trade. Standing by in a ready room day after day, waiting for alert that always turns out to be just another practice. Drove them crackers. They quit. One day in September I pulled an alert and got only 7 drills manned. Talk talked it over with Lyle and Citrus at night. Next day, Lyle wanted to know if Prof and I would okay Bolshoi expense money. They formed something Lyle named Corps. Never inquired into duties or cost, because next time I inspected a ready room, found 3 girls and no shortage of drillmen. Girls were in uniform of 2nd Defense Gunners, just as men were. Drillmen hadn't bothered much with authorized uniform up to then, and one girl was wearing sergeant's stripes with gun captain's badge. Made my inspection very short. Most girls don't have muscle to be a drillman, and I doubted if this girl could wrestle a drill well enough to justify that badge. But regular gun captain was on job. Was no harm in girls learning to handle lasers. Morale was obviously high. I gave matter no more worry. Prof underrated his new Congress. I'm sure he never wanted anything but a body which would rubber chop what we were doing, and thereby do make it voice of people. But the fact that new congressmen were not yammerheads resulted in them doing more than Prof intended, especially Committee on Permanent Organization, Resolutions, and Government Structure. Got out of hand because we were all trying to do too much. Permanent heads of Congress were Prof, Finn Nielsen, and Lyle. Prof showed up only when he wanted to speak to them. Seldom. He spent time with Mike on plans and analysis. Odds shortened to 1 in 5 during September 76. Time with Stu and Shini Sheehan on propaganda, controlling official news to Earthside, very different news that went via clandestine radio, and reslanting news that came up from Earthside. Besides that, he had finger in everything. I reported to him once a day, and all ministries, both real and dummy, did same. I kept Finn Nielsen busy. He was my commander of armed forces. He had his laser gun infantry to supervise. 6 men with captured weapons on day we nabbed Warden. Now 800 scattered all through Luna and armed with Kongville monkey copies. Besides that, Lyle's organization, Still Yagi Air Corps, Still Yagi Debs, ladies from Hades, irregulars, kept for morale and renamed Peter Pan's Pirates, and Leslie Stratacore. All these halfway military groups reported through Wyo to Finn. I shoved it onto him. I had other problems, such as trying to be a computer mechanic as well as a statesman when jobs, such as installing that computer at New Catapult site, had to be done. Besides which, I am not an executive, and Finn had talent for it. I shoved 1st and 2nd Defense Gunners under him too. But first I decided that these 2 skeleton regiments were a brigade, and made Judge Brody a brigadier. Brody knew as much about military matters as I did. 0, but was widely known, highly respected, had unlimited hard sense, and had been drillman before he lost leg. Finn was not drillman, so couldn't be placed directly over them. They wouldn't have listened. I thought about using my co-husband Greg, but Greg was needed at Mariandarum Catapult. Was only mechanic who had followed every phase of construction. Lyle helped Prof, helped Stu, had her own organizations, made trips up to Mariandarum, and had little time to preside over Congress. Task fell on Senior Committee Chairman, Wolf Korsakov, who was busier than any of us. Lunovo Co. was running everything authority used to run, and many new things as well. Wolf had a good committee. Prof should have kept closer eye on it. Wolf had caused his boss, Moshe Blom, to be elected vice chairman, and had, in all seriousness, outlined for his committee problem of determining what permanent government should be. Then Wolf turned back on it. Those busy laddies split up and did it. Studied forms of government in Carnegie Library. Held subcommittee meetings, 3 or 4 people at a time. Few enough to worry Prof, had he known, and when Congress met early in September to ratify some appointments and elect some congressmen at large, instead of adjourning, Comrade Baum had gavel, and they recessed, and met again, and turned themselves into Committee of the Whole, and passed their resolution, and next thing we knew, the entire Congress was a constitutional convention, divided into working groups, headed by those subcommittees. I think Prof was shocked, but he couldn't undo it. Had all been proper under rules he himself had written, but he rolled with punch, went to Novelin, where Congress now met, more central, and spoke to them with usual good nature and simply cast doubts on what they were doing, rather than telling them flatly they were wrong. After gracefully thanking them, he started picking early drafts to pieces. Comrade members, like fire and fusion, Government is a dangerous servant and a terrible master. You now have freedom, if you can keep it. But do remember that you can lose this freedom more quickly to yourselves than to any other tyrant. Move slowly, be hesitant, puzzle out the consequences of every word. I would not be unhappy if this convention sat for 10 years before reporting, but I would be frightened if you took less than a year. Distrust the obvious. Suspect the traditional. For in the past, mankind has not done well when saddling itself with governments. For example, I note in one draft report a proposal for setting up a commission to divide Luna into congressional districts and to reapportion them from time to time according to population. This is the traditional way. Therefore, it should be suspect, considered guilty until proved innocent. Perhaps you feel that this is the only way. May I suggest others? Surely, where a man lives is the least important thing about him. Constituencies might be formed by dividing people by occupation, or by age, or even alphabetically. Or they might not be divided, every member elected at large. And do not object that this would make it impossible for any man not widely known throughout Luna to be elected. That might be the best possible thing for Luna. You might even consider installing the candidates who receive the least number of votes. Unpopular men may be just the sort to save you from a new tyranny. Don't reject the idea merely because it seems preposterous. Think about it. In past history, popularly elected governments have been no better and sometimes far worse than overt tyrannies. But if representative government turns out to be your intention, there still may be ways to achieve it better than the territorial district. For example, you each represent about 10,000 human beings, perhaps 7,000 of voting age, and some of you were elected by slim majorities. Suppose, instead of election, a man were qualified for office by petition, signed by 4,000 citizens. He would then represent those 4,000 affirmatively, with no disgruntled minority. For what would have been a minority in a territorial constituency would all be free to start other petitions or join in them. All would then be represented by men of their choice, or a man with 8,000 supporters might have 2 votes in this body. Difficulties, objections, practical points to be worked out, many of them. But you could work them out, and thereby avoid the chronic sickness of representative government, the disgruntled minority which feels correctly that it has been disenfranchised. But whatever you do, do not let the past be a straitjacket. I note one proposal to make this Congress a 2-house body. Excellent. The more impediments to legislation, the better. But instead of following tradition, I suggest 1 house of legislators, another whose single duty is to repeal laws. Let the legislators pass laws only with a 2/3 majority, while the repealers are able to cancel any law through a mere 1/3 minority. Preposterous? Think about it. If a bill is so poor that it cannot command 2/3 of your consents, is it not likely that it would make a poor law? And if a law is disliked by as many as 1/3, is it not likely that you would be better off without it? But in writing your Constitution, let me invite attention to the wonderful virtues of the negative. Accentuate the negative. Let your document be studded with things the government is forever forbidden to do. No conscript armies. No interference, however slight, with freedom of press, or speech, or travel, or assembly, or of religion, or of instruction, or communication, or occupation. No involuntary taxation. Comrades, if you were to spend 5 years in a study of history, while thinking of more and more things that your government should promise never to do, and then let your Constitution be nothing but those negatives, I would not fear the outcome. What I fear most are affirmative actions of sober and well-intentioned men, granting the government powers to do something that appears to need doing. Please remember always that the lunar authority was created from the noblest of purposes by just such sober and well-intentioned men, all popularly elected. And with that thought, I leave you to your labors. Thank you. Господин President, question of information. You said no involuntary taxation. Then how do you expect us to pay for things? Tanstaffel. Goodness me, sir, that's your problem. I can think of several ways. Voluntary contributions, just as churches support themselves. Government-sponsored lotteries, to which no one need subscribe. Or perhaps you congressmen should dig down into your own pouches and pay for whatever is needed. And that would be one way to keep government down in size to its indispensable functions, whatever they may be, if indeed there are any. I would be satisfied to have the golden rule be the only law. I see no need for any other, nor for any method of enforcing it. But if you really believe that your neighbors must have laws for their own good, why shouldn't you pay for it? Comrades, I beg you, do not resort to compulsory taxation. There is no worse tyranny than to force a man to pay for what he does not want merely because you think it would be good for him. Prof bowed and left. Stu and I followed. Once in an otherwise empty capsule, I tackled him. Prof, I like much that you said, but about taxation, aren't you talking one thing and doing another? Who do you think is going to pay for all this spending we're doing? He was silent long moments, then said, Manuel, my only ambition is to reach the day when I can stop pretending to be a chief executive. Is no answer. You have put your finger on the dilemma of all government, and the reason I am an anarchist. The power to tax, once conceded, has no limits. It contains until it destroys. I was not joking when I told them to dig into their own pouches. It may not be possible to do away with government. Sometimes I think that government is an inescapable disease of human beings. But it may be possible to keep it small and starved and inoffensive. And can you think of a better way than by requiring the governors themselves to pay the costs of their antisocial hobby? Still doesn't say how to pay for what we are doing now. How, Manuel? You know how we are doing it. We're stealing it. I'm neither proud of it nor ashamed. It's the means we have. If they ever catch on, they may eliminate us, and that I am prepared to face. At least in stealing, we have not created the villainous precedent of taxation. Prof, I hate to say this. Then why say it? Because, damn it, I'm in it as deeply as you are, and want to see that money paid back. Hate to say it, but what you just said sounds like hypocrisy. He chuckled. My dear Manuel, has it taken you all these years to decide that I am a hypocrite? Then you admit it. No, but if it makes you feel better to think that I am one, you're welcome to use me as your scapegoat. But I am not a hypocrite to myself because I was aware the day we declared the revolution that we would need much money and would have to steal it. It did not trouble me because I considered it better than food riots 6 years hence, cannibalism in 8. I made my choice and have no regrets. I shut up, silenced but not satisfied. Stu said, Professor, I'm glad to hear that you are anxious to stop being president. So, you share our comrades' misgivings? Only in part. Having been born to wealth, stealing doesn't fret me as much as it does him. But now that Congress has taken up the matter of the Constitution, I intend to find time to attend sessions. I plan to nominate you for king. Prof looked shocked. Sir, if nominated, I shall repute it. If elected, I shall abdicate. Don't be in a hurry. It might be the only way to get the sort of constitution you want, and that I want too, with about your own mild lack of enthusiasm. You could be proclaimed the king, and the people would take you. Villainies aren't wedded to a republic. They'd love the idea. Ritual and robes and a court and all that. No. Yada. When the time comes, you won't be able to refuse. Because we need a king, and there isn't another candidate who can be accepted. Bernardo the First, King of Luna and Emperor of the surrounding species. Stuart, I must ask you to stop. I'm becoming quite ill. You'll get used to it. I'm a royalist because I'm a Democrat. I shan't let your reluctance for the idea any more than you let stealing stop you. I said, halt it, Stu. You said you are a royalist because you're a Democrat. Of course. A king is the people's only protection against all tyranny, especially against the worst of all tyrants themselves. Prof will be ideal for the job, because he does not want the job. His only shortcoming is that he is a bachelor with no heir. We'll fix that. I'm going to name you as his heir. Crown Prince, His Royal Highness Prince Manuel de La Paz, Duke of Lunosity, Admiral General of the Armed Forces and Protector of the Weak. I stared, then buried face in hands. Oh, bog. Book 3. Tonstoffel. 23. Monday, 12 October, 2076. About 1900, I was headed home after a hard day of nonsense in our offices in Raffles. Delegation of grain farmers wanted to see Prof, and I had been called back because he was in Hong Kong, Luna. Was rude to them. Had been 2 months of embargo, and FN had never done us favor of being sufficiently nasty. Mostly they had ignored us, made no reply to our claims. I suppose to do so would have been to recognize us. Stu and Sheeny and Prof had been hard put to slant news from Earthside to keep up a warlike spirit. At first, everybody kept his pieces handy. They wore them, helmets on their arms, going to and from work in corridors. But then slacked off as days went by and did not seem to be in danger. Pea suit is nuisance when you don't need it. So bulky. Presently, tap rooms began to display signs, no pea suits inside. If a loony can't stop for half a liter on way home because of pea suit, he'll leave it home, or at station, or wherever he needs it most. My word, had neglected matter myself that day. Got this call to go back to office, and was halfway there before I remembered. I just reached easement lock 13 when I heard and felt a sound that scares a loony more than anything else. A chuff, in distance, followed by a draft. Was into lock almost without undogging, then balanced pressures and through, dogged it behind me and ran for our home lock, through it and shouting, "Peace outs, everybody! Get boys in from tunnels and close all airtight doors!" Mom and Milla were only adults in sight. Both looked startled, got busy without a word. I burst into workshop, grabbed pea suit. Mike, answer. "I'm here, ma'am," he said calmly. Heard explosive, pressure drop, what situation? That's level 3, L City. Rupture tube station west. Now partly controlled. 6 ships landed, L City under attack. What? Let me finish, ma'am. 6 transports landed, L City under attack by troops. Hong Kong inferred to be. Phone lines broken at relay BL. Johnson City under attack. I have closed the armored doors between J City and Complex under. I cannot see Novolin, but blip projection indicates it is under attack. Same for Churchill, Tycho under. 1 ship in high ellipsoid over me, rising, inferred to be command ship. No other blips. 6 ships? Where in hell were you? They answered so calmly that I studied down. Far side approach, man. I'm blind back there. They came in on tight garrison didos, skimming the peaks. I barely saw the chop off for Luna City. The ship at J City is the only one I can see. The other landings I conclusively infer from the ballistics shown by blip tracks. I heard the break-in at Tube West, L City, and can now hear fighting in Novolin. The rest is conclusive inference. Probability above 0.99. I called you and Professor at once. Cut breath. Operation Hard Rock. Prepare to execute. Program ready. Man, not being able to reach you, I used your voice. Playback? Yet, yes, da. Heard myself tell watch officer at Old Catapult Head to go on red alert for Hard Rock. First load at launch. All others on belts. Everything cast loose. But do not launch until ordered by me personally. Then launch to plan full automatic. I made him repeat back. Okay, I told Mike. Drill gun cruise. Your voice again. Manned and then sent back to ready rooms. The command ship won't reach SKYLINES for 3 hours, 4.7 minutes. No target for more than 5 hours. You may maneuver or launch missiles. Slow down, man. Even a missile I'll see with minutes to spare. It's full bright lunar up there now. How much do you want the man to take? Unnecessarily. Sorry. Better let me talk to Greg. Playback. Heard my voice talking to my co-husband at Mariandarum. I sounded tense but calm. Mike had given him situation. Had told him to prepare Operation Little David's Sling. Keep it on standby for full automatic. I had assured him that master computer would keep standby computer programmed, and shift would be made automatically if communication was broken. I also told him that he must take command and use own judgment if communication was lost, and not restored after 4 hours. Listen to Earthside radio, and make up own mind. Greg had taken it quietly, repeated his orders. Then it said, Manny, tell family I love them. Mike had done me proud. He had answered for me with just right embarrassed choke. I'll do that, Greg. And look, Greg, I love you too. You know that, don't you? I know it, Manny. And I'm going to say a special prayer for you. Thanks, Greg. Bye, Manny. Go do what you must. So, I went and did what I had to do. Mike had played my role as well, or better than I could. Finn, when he could be reached, would be handled by Adam. So I left, fast, calling out Greg's message of love to Mom. She had pea-suited and Ryle's grandpa, and suited him in. First time in years. So I went out, helmet closed, and laser gun in hand. And reached log 13, and found it blind dog from other side with nobody in sight through bullseye. All correct, per drill. Except still Yagi in charge of that lock should have been in sight. Did no good to pound. Finally went back where I had come, and on through our home, through our vegetable tunnels, and up to our